Welcome into part 3 of the 2016-17 LMU men's basketball season preview. I'm Scott Erlin in again with head men's basketball coach Josh Schertz to talk about our group of forwards and centers. Coach, yesterday we discussed the guards and, kind of really overall the lack of continuity there, mostly new faces, young pieces and stuff. But really when you look at the group of forwards, overall pretty much every piece back from last year. The lone senior was a big loss. Guy named Curtis Mamillion came off the bench, kind of a do-everything, was willing to do whatever it take to win. So just talk about him and then that group going forward.
Yeah, well, Kurt was awesome. Probably one of the more underrated careers here. When you look back, he was here 5 years. He obviously redshirted, played 4. I don't think he ever started a significant amount of games any season, and yet you look up and he's, I think, 3rd in the history of the school in block shots. He's 11th in the history of the school in rebounding. He's 1st in the history of the school in field goal percentage. I mean, the numbers are just remarkable for a guy that really probably for his career averaged 17, 18 minutes a game. But he was awesome for us last year. Emmanuel was hurt most of the first semester. He stepped in and did a tremendous job as a starter, and then when Emmanuel got healthy and we talked about it, and Emmanuel hadn't beat him out for the job, but I talked to Kurt about certainly I felt like Emmanuel needed some confidence, and it was important for Emmanuel to start for Emmanuel, but that he hadn't beat Kurt out yet. So I asked Kurt, I said, if you don't want to do it, totally understand. I said, but I think it'd be best for our team long term if you'll come off the bench. And just being the tremendous human being he is, he had no problem. Kurt was a no ego guy and came off. Minutes really stayed the same for him, but he did a great job for us, kind of culminating. And he had done it over a number of games, but certainly in the Elite Eight against Barry he stands out. Emmanuel gets 2 fouls in the first few minutes. Kurt comes in, gets 11 points, 7 rebounds in the first half, and we go from down double digits to leading at halftime, and he was really the leading scorer, rebounder for us in the first half of the Elite Eight. So we'll miss Kurt, his game, and certainly one of the best personalities. I know you guys didn't get to see it as much, but in terms of internally, one of the great personalities we've ever had at LMU, probably the best sense of humor of anybody I've been around, in terms of a guy you enjoy and really helped inside the locker room, keeping the mood light, and so many things he did that maybe weren't seen by the outside that we'll miss for the human element. Him as a player tremendously, but certainly we'll miss the human element every bit as much, if not more.
Well, and then looking at the group going forward, 2 starters from that collection coming back, Dorian Pinson, who swings back and forth the pendulum between a guard and a forward, averaged almost a triple-double last season, 10 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 58% from the floor, was really just, as we talked about before, kind of the machine that makes us tick offensively. And then Emmanuel Terry, one of the shot blockers nationally, really came on strong late in the season, made this the Southeast Regional Championship All-Tournament team. So having those 2 guys back, how important is that for y'all's success this year?
Well, I think they're guys that are huge for us. We really have a core of 3 guys that have played significant minutes. Paul Woodson certainly played minutes, but probably wouldn't be quantified as significant. Emmanuel and Dorian, as sophomores, starting a team that played the national championship game. Certainly, I think the experience they gained last year. Like I said, Emmanuel's hurt a lot of the first semester. Really kind of came into his own in the NCAA tournament. Had a good second half of the year, but really starting with that regional final against Lenoir Rhine all the way through the national championship game against Augustana, he was certainly played at a really, really high level. And Emmanuel's a guy that has tremendous talent. He's passionate about the game, loves the game. He's a good competitor. He wants to be good, and he's got obviously he's high character, great heart, all those things that you'd want in somebody. So his best basketball is way ahead of him. I mean, we won't see it here at LMU. He's a guy that is young. He came in as a freshman for us. I mean, the first few weeks of school, he's 17 years old. I mean, even this year, he's a up and into September. He's a 19-year-old junior, and so he just turned 20, and he's still developing, growing. I think he's a better player than he was last year, but again, I think his best basketball is way out there somewhere. Probably be somewhere in his mid-20s before he hits his ceiling. But he's a guy that I think will hit his ceiling because he's just got such a passion for the game and such a great work ethic and does the right thing. So, but he's a guy that will be huge for us from a rim protection standpoint, from a rebounding standpoint. His offensive game has improved. He's gained more confidence offensively. He's just a guy that we need to have he's going to have a totally different role. Last year he was kind of a rim runner, ball screen and rim run guy, and was a guy that really was obviously protected the rim and did a great job cleaning up the backboards for us. This year we need him to be more consistent. We need him to play at the level or even higher than he did at the end of the season, and do it on a consistent night in, night out basis. We need him to be great defensively in terms of cleaning up when we mess up in front of him, in terms of getting beat off the dribble and taking away some easy baskets from the opponent. And he's got to be great on the backboards. And then offensively, he's got to give us, hopefully, consistently what he gave us those last 4 games. I think he averaged probably 16, 17 points a game. He's a guy that's certainly capable of doing that, capable of averaging a double-double and being one of the better big men in the country. And Dorian, you're getting a guy back that, I think is probably the most underrated player. He doesn't get a lot of credit for what he did last year, but he was the guy that made everything work. We talked about playing without a point guard, and we did in the the prototypical sense, but Dorian was the point guard, led us in assists by a large margin, led us in rebounding by a large margin, led us in steals by a large margin, led us in 3 major categories. He's probably the most unique player I've ever coached in terms of offensively. He can really almost play 1 through 5, and defensively he can guard really 1 through 5. So he's a very unique player in terms of his skill set, his versatility, his IQ, what he brings to the table. He's got to play well for us to be good. Again, he's got, just like Emmanuel, they were guys who were big players for us last year. They were starters. They were, Dorian was an all-conference player. Emmanuel, like I said, was all-region in terms of this in the NCAA tournament. But right now, they have to be consistent, do a game in, game out. We're going to need more from them. We talked to them, as the year ended last year, and we got into this kind of the off season was about raising their level, and both those guys got to raise their level as good as they were last year for us to be successful. But I'd say without question, Dorian, you could debate on if he's our best player, but I think certainly in terms of the different dynamics he brings, there's nobody more important to our team and our team's success than Dorian Pinson.
Well, and then in addition to those 2 guys, you had mentioned Paul Woodson back too. Nixon Blanc also back. He had his first year where he could actually play, redshirt freshman last year. Paul Woodson entering his 5th year. So what do you expect from those 2 guys this season?
Well, start with Paul. Paul's 5th year guy. He's Paul's been great for us. He's not been a guy who's gotten a ton of minutes over his career here, but when called on, he's been very solid. Last year we're playing Newberry, and he goes 6 for 6 in the field, scores 14 points. He's had 16-point games here. He's had multiple double-doubles, 7 or 8 over his career. Kind of like Curtis McMillian, it kind of goes unnoticed a little bit because of the guys ahead of him, and he hasn't gotten just the consistent level minutes that probably he's deserves. But he's got a chance this year, depending on how things shake out. Paul's a guy that's unbelievable defensively. He's a guy that I think ball moves better on offense when he's in, because he understands what to do, how to play, and his IQ is much like Dorian's, where it's at the highest level in terms of their understanding of the game. And Paul's a great teammate. That's what I really respect about him is our bench was great last year in terms of even the guys who didn't play a lot, the bench in terms of the energy they brought, and Paul, whether he's playing a lot or not playing at all or whatever, he's a guy that's happy for his teammates. He's not one of those guys who's so small that a teammate's success bothers him or overshadows. I'm sure he's not always. I'm sure he wants to play. I know he's a competitor, but he's not a small individual. He's able to be happy for his teammates' success, and and so I've really always had great respect for him as a person, as a player, because it hasn't always gone his way, and he's never given into that and gotten bitter or down. And he'll have a chance to impact us this year, I'd say, without question. Nixon Blanc's a guy that has been waiting his opportunity. I think Nick will get a chance to play this year. He's a third-year guy, redshirt sophomore. Again, got limited opportunities, but we don't go into Carson Newman and win that game without him last year. I think he got 8 points and 7 or 8 rebounds, and in 17 minutes we were in serious foul trouble trying to hook up with Sawyer Williams. And Nick in other games stepped in when he got opportunities and was a good player. He's strong. He's physical. He plays with an unbelievable motor. He's a wide body guy, so he's good on the glass. He's a good positional defender. He's pretty good in his pick and roll coverages. So Nick's a guy that I think should have a chance to play minutes, help us, and certainly will be in the mix of guys. Along with Emmanuel, Dorian, Paul, and those guys trying to get minutes here this year.
Well, and then the one guy, like we had talked about, having to replace Coach McMillian, did a lot of things. Two new guys come in. Rondy Hackett, obviously, he was here last year as a redshirt, and then one of the big offseason happenings was Chris Perry transfers over from University of South Florida. 2 guys to really fortify that unit this year. Talk about the impact that Chris, obviously a guy who was coming out of high school, being the 96th ranked player in the nation, and then Rondy, who is a big body, versatile forward. Talk about the impact those 2 guys can have on that unit.
Well, I think Chris is a guy that as he gets in, it's always hard with with 1-year transfers, and I say that because of how much they got to intake from how we do things, and we were really fortunate with Jalen. I never worry about the fit with guys in terms of, their personalities, because I think the one thing, we don't take many transfers. When we do, we're certainly very honest with them, and I think that's always been the case. So my thought being is, if they still came knowing who we are and how we go about business and how this team operates, they know we're not going to be about one person or it's never been about one player in our program, and certainly you're not going to probably put up crazy stats and et cetera, but you're going to play with other good players and have a lot of fun and be surrounded by really good guys and all the things that we think we have to offer. But if they know who we are and we're up front with them and they still come, it says a lot about their personality and a lot about who they are and what they value, whether that's a guy like Jarrell, that's a guy like Jake Troiley, that's a guy like Jalen Steele, Chris Perry. You go down the list of guys we've had over the years, and so that part I don't worry about. Chris, the thing for him is going to be the intake of information of how we do things, adapting and acclimating quickly. There's not a couple years to really figure it out. Even a guy like Jarrell was a redshirt and then a bench player. Trayvon Shaw got to a redshirt last year. It takes a little while to figure out how we play, what we do. That process has got to be sped up for Chris. And so he's coming from a different program at South Florida in terms of how they do things and what they run and what they do on both sides of the ball. So that's going to be the challenge for him, is figuring out what we do, how hard we want him to compete, and how the level of execution he's got to come in with on a day-to-day basis. If he does that, obviously he's a tremendously gifted player. He's got size, he's got great wingspan. He's a guy that is highly skilled. And Chris is a great kid. I've had him here now for a couple months. He's a terrific human being. He wants to do right. He wants to be successful. He wants the team to win. And so we'll see. The key for him is going to be is how quickly he can understand what we're doing on both sides of the ball. Get with that and get his execution level where it needs to be to get minutes. Because if that happens, then obviously with his talent, he's a guy that could have a tremendous impact for us this season. Rondy is probably different than the other bigs in the sense that he's really more comfortable on the perimeter shooting the ball than he is in the post. Ronnie's a guy that's capable, though, of getting hot from three. He's a guy that rebounds the ball at a pretty good clip. He's a decent, probably above average shot blocker. But his best skill in terms of as a player in terms of offensively is his ability to step out and shoot the ball and stretch the floor. So that gives him a chance to potentially compete for some minutes as he, again, kind of almost in the same boat as Chris, kind of learns the level he's got to compete at and execute at to be successful here. And those things happen. Ronnie's a guy with a lot of talent, and again would provide kind of a unique look for us in that he's a perimeter shooting big that can really stretch the floor and is capable of knocking down. And we've seen him practice get on runs where he makes 3 or 4 threes in a pretty short period of time.
One in the guards preview when we had talked about, trying to figure out that lineup with so many, that rotation with so many new guys, whether you're going to play with 4 guards, play small, play 3 guards. You had really mentioned that hinged so much on the development of the bigs and kind of, what happened there. So how important is it? How important do you see this group? Because obviously they are, on paper, your point of strength.
Mm-hmm.
So how important is their development towards the way this team looks by the end of the year?
Well, it's huge. I mean, the thing in basketball, and you kind of extrapolate it down to its simplest form, is you got to have more players play well than the opponent. So the more guys you have capable of playing at a high level, the better your chances of being successful. That's a very simple equation, but you understand what I'm saying. And so the more guys we have capable of coming in and impacting, winning, and playing at a high level, the better. I think for us with the bigs, certainly there's no question, Dorian and Emmanuel, their level of responsibility has to rise in terms of what they did last year and what they need to do for us to be successful this year. And that's been the case over the years. When we've lost players and we've, in terms of graduation over the years, it's really very rarely been some new guy walking the door that's kind of come to save the day. It's almost always been guys that are already inside the program, raising their level and being ready to take on that added burden and responsibility. So for us to be successful, Dorian, Emmanuel, and certainly I put Lou in that category, have to be, be better and again raise their level so they can produce at a higher level and perform more consistently than they did last year. And they were all 3 of them were good last year. And then I think when you talk about the rest of those guys, it's certainly the development. It will kind of allow us to figure out how we're going to play, because as we talked about with the guards, it's about getting your best players on the floor. So how do you do that? And then you got to figure out who your best players are. Do you have more guards? Like last year, certainly we had our guards were a strength. And so how could we play to maximize the ability to get, we had 5 guards that really played a lot of minutes, and we had 3 bigs. When you looked at it, we played the 5 guards, and we played Dorian and Emmanuel and Curtis. So lineups were tended to swing more small than they did big. Now, if we have 4 or 5 bigs that are really playing a high level, we have to look at playing big more and probably playing more, playing less guards. So that's going to kind of play itself out. There's not been a huge separation outside top 3 or 4 guys. So in my opinion, kind of 5 through 11, 4 through 11 has kind of been up and down, and it couldn't change. It's pretty fluid right there. And so, these next few weeks, hopefully, as we get into games and start seeing how people look and practice and hopefully as these guys start figuring things out, there'll be some separation, and that'll give us more clarity on what's the best way to play. But we need as many guys performing at the highest level possible, because again, that gives you that's the thing that last year's team had that I think really separated out was on any night, those 8 guys that played minutes were all capable of playing great. And so inevitably, you're not going to have everybody play well every single night. But when you can go down to your bench and guys 6, 7, 8, 5, whatever, are capable of playing at a high level, it gives you a chance to win every game, because ultimately, like we talked about, that simple equation is if you have more players play well than the opponent, chances are you're going to win the game. So the more guys you have capable of doing that, the better your chances are. So that's our job right now, is try to get as many guys performing at as high a level as possible, and then keep raising that level as we get on here into the next few weeks.